the American Central Intelligence Agency, also known as the CIA. The CIA, which was founded in 1947 by American President Truman in the state of Virginia, was to prevent the dangers that could come from outside to ensure the security of the country. This organization, whose 2023 budget is a huge figure of $100 billion, has carried out operations such as coup d'etat and overthrowing the president in many countries until today. Let's examine in more detail the major operations and coups carried out by the CIA from its establishment to the present day. The year 1945, right after the Second World War. In these days, when the New World Order was beginning to be established, American President Truman ordered the establishment of a foreign intelligence agency to have a say both against the expanding Soviet power and in strategic countries. The draft, prepared jointly by Army intelligence agent Colonel Sidney Mashpee and Fleet Admiral Joseph Ernest King, was hastily submitted to the American Parliament in early 1946. The National Intelligence Authority unit was formally established when President Truman signed this draft in January 1946, despite opposition from the State Department and the FBI. This unit was later abolished, and the Central Intelligence Agency, or the CIA for short, was established on September 18, 1947. The first years of the Cold War were recorded as a period when the CIA faltered and failed. The Soviet Union's seizure of power in Romania and Czechoslovakia, its full control in Eastern Germany, and the inability to conclude the Korean War as desired were seen as a result of the CIA's failures. Eisenhower, who was selected as American president during this period, believed that despite the CIA's failures, a little more chance should be given. Finding the opportunity it was looking for, the CIA organized its first successful operation in Iran in 1957. Since the Second World War, 40% of the oil used in America and 70% of the oil used in Europe was produced in Iran. Almost all of Iran's oil wells were operated by British companies. In 1957, an Iranian politician, Mohammad Mossadegh, prepared a bill to nationalize Iran's oil wells and presented it to the parliament, causing its popularity to increase. When this bill was accepted in the parliament this same year, Iranian Shah Reza Pahlavi had to bring Mossadegh, who got stronger, to the prime minister. After a while, the mass of Mossadegh disturbed the Iranian Shah, and the two started a serious power struggle. When Shah Pahlavi attempted to oust the prime minister in 1953, he was forced to flee Iran due to the nationwide protests. After that, the CIA agents who stepped in contacted the Iranian army and started making coup plans against the Mossadegh administration. The Iranian army, led by General Fozlollah Zahedi, started to seize government buildings one by one by pressing the button on August 15, 1953. After 4 eventful days, the coup was successful with the surrender of Mossadegh, and on August 19th, the army took over the administration of the country completely. Shortly after the coup, Shah Reza Pahlavi returned to his country and came to power, while the general who carried out a coup, Zahedi, was appointed as the prime minister. Although he denied the reports that he had a hand in this incident, which went down in history as CIA Operation Ajax, he officially accepted his responsibility for the coup in 2013. After the first successful operation of the CIA, the United States would begin to implement the policy of changing government with a coup. As a matter of fact, in 1954, a new coup plan was put into practice to overthrow the communist government in Guatemala. In Guatemala, which had a turbulent policy since the beginning of the 20th century, communist leader Juan Aravelo's government came to power with the Guatemalan Revolution in 1944. After years of nightmares, Aravelo started the spring season in Guatemala. He organized many structural reforms such as the expropriation of factories owned by British companies, improvements in workers' rights, land reform, and the legislation of the Communist Party. The communist leader, who retired in 1951 after ruling the country for 7 years, replaced him with Jacobo Arbenz. With the continued communist regime in the country, it became impossible for American and British companies to race around the country. Disturbed by the current state of affairs, the American government made the news that Guatemala had become a Soviet satellite state in many newspapers through the CIA. On the other hand, he reformed a small rebel army to implement the coup plan. He brought here the former Guatemalan leader Carlos Castillo Armas. In June 1954, as Armas and the rebel army took action, raiding government offices, CIA-controlled planes began bombing army headquarters in the capital, Guatemala City. After nearly 10 days of conflict, Communist President Arbenz had to flee abroad, while putschist Carlos Armas declared himself the new president of the country. While nearly 400,000 people lost their lives in the civil war that broke out in the country after the coup, the putschist President Armas was assassinated in 1957. 9 years after the coup, the then American President Eisenhower admitted that they had orchestrated the coup by the CIA by declaring that we had to get rid of the communist government that had seized power. When the dates showed the year 1960, the path of the CIA this time fell on the African continent. Congo, a Belgian colony, gained its independence in 1960 under the liberal-minded Patrice Lumumba as a prime minister. Lumumba was on the side of the Soviet Union in the Cold War and helped the two states establish close relations, soon caught the attention of the CIA. American President Eisenhower commissioned the CIA, and the Congolese Prime Minister ordered that the Lumumba be eliminated. CIA agents arriving in Congo contacted the country's chief of staff, as they always do. The agents who paid General Mobutu $250,000 also donated 8,000 automatic weapons to be used in the coup. Only 8 days after this meeting, the Congolese army took action and arrested Prime Minister Lumumba, claiming that he had received bribes from the Soviet Union. Soldiers didn't hesitate to open fire on the people in the country, which was dragged into a civil war when Lumumba's supporters protested this event. Thinking that the events would not settle down as long as Lumumba was alive, the putschists executed the prime minister by throwing him into the acid well and completely melting him. After completing the task given by the CIA, General Mobutu returned to his duty, leaving the country's administration to former President Kasavubu 2 months after the coup. As a result of this successful operation of the CIA, another country was taken under American control. In 1961, a similar event took place in Dominica. As a result of an operation involving the CIA, dictator Rafael Trujillo, who has ruled the Dominican Republic since 1930, was assassinated in front of his palace. He was replaced by the pro-American Joaquin Balaguer. In the same year, the path of CIA agents fell, this time to Cuba. Located right under America's nose, this small country was ruled by communism and was an ally of America's enemy, the Soviet Union. That's why removing President Fidel Castro was the only solution. Taking action for this, the CIA organized a group of Cuban anti-communists and attempted a coup to overthrow the Fidel Castro regime. On the morning of April 15, 1961, 8 CIA planes were painted in Cuban Air Force colors and bombed the airports in Havana and Santiago. When Fidel Castro, who made a statement on the day of the incident, blamed the United States for the attack, other planned air strikes had to be cancelled. Having eliminated the possibility of attacking from the air, the CIA decided to try its luck from the sea this time. At midnight on April 17th, 2 CIA landing craft entered the Bay of Pigs off the southern coast of Cuba. There were a total of 1,300 armed Cuban exiles and a large number of ammunition and tanks on the ships. Bloody clashes took place between the putschists, who tried to land for 3 days, and the Cuban army, which fought not to land them. During these conflicts, the superiority passed into the hands of the Cuban army, thanks to the intelligence and weapons support provided by the KGB agents. The invasion of the Bay of Pigs, which continued until April 21st, resulted in the victory of the Cuban army at noon of the same day. As a result of this unsuccessful operation, 2 CIA agents captured by Cuba were executed and killed. America, whose authority was shaken, didn't give up its love for Cuba and organized many assassinations in the country through the CIA. While this operation of the CIA continued until 1979, thousands of communists were assassinated by the CIA. As for the Brazilian coup in 1964, concerns about the situation of Brazilian President Goulart in the United States began in 1962. John F. Kennedy flew to Brazil in December 1962 to meet with Goulart. During the 3-hour meeting, Kennedy told Goulart that he was uncomfortable with the presence of communists, ultra-nationalists, ultra-leftists, and anti-Americans in the government. He then offered Goulart a choice: either remove anti-American politicians in Brazil from political power, or the United States would put economic pressure on Brazil. Since there has been no change in Brazil's policy in the intervening year, Kennedy ordered the CIA to contact the Brazilian army. This was the harbinger of the impending coup in Brazil. However, President Kennedy couldn't see this coup would happen. Look how fate the American president John F. Kennedy, who gave all these assassination orders, died as a result of an assassination on November 22, 1963. The person who killed him was Lee Harvey Oswald, a former Soviet agent. When Oswald was captured shortly after the incident, was killed by a nightclub owner, Jack Ruby, while being taken to prison after giving his first statement. It was not possible to find out who was behind the assassination. Richard Helms, who was the CIA's chief of covert operations, the year of the incident, admitted in a speech in 1979 that the assassin Clay Shaw was working for the CIA at the time. However, the mystery of the Kennedy assassination has not been clarified until today. The operation in Brazil continued during the period of Lyndon Johnson, who replaced Kennedy after his assassination. On March 30, 1964, CIA agents in Brazil stated that the Brazilian army commander Castelo Branco and his other generals were ready to take action against Goulart. The next day, army units in major states such as Rio de Janeiro, Sao Paulo, Paraná, Bahia, and Goiás mobilized and launched the coup attempt. Since the First Army didn't participate in this coup attempt, General Blanco succeeded in overthrowing the government after the events that lasted for about 24 hours. The next day, when President Goulart fled to Uruguay, General Blanco was appointed to the vacant post of president. After this coup, names close to America were brought to power as a result of the coups organized by the CIA in Argentina in 1966, in Bolivia in 1971, in Uruguay in 1973, and in Chile once again in 1976. In 1979, when the Soviet Union entered Afghanistan, the CIA took charge in Afghanistan this time. The CIA, which provided weapons, logistics, and tactical assistance to Afghan Mujahideen and Islamist groups during the Afghan-Soviet War that lasted for 10 years between 1979 and 1989, provided $9 billion in aid to Afghanistan in these 10 years. In the end, even though the CIA was the winner after the Soviet Union left Afghanistan in 1989, it left behind a bloody terrorist organization like Al-Qaeda, which is hostile to both America and the West. Robin Cook, Foreign Secretary in the United Kingdom from 1997 to 2001, said in a speech, "The CIA supplied weapons to Arab Mujahideen, including Osama bin Laden, but bin Laden was a product of a massive miscalculation by Western security agencies. He was armed by the CIA and funded by the Saudis to fight the Russian invasion of Afghanistan in the 1980s. In response to these allegations, the CIA declared that they only support Afghan Mujahideen and that they have never contacted bin Laden." After bin Laden was killed in a CIA operation in Pakistan on May 2, 2011, America withdrew from Afghanistan completely in 2021. Increasing its presence in the Middle East after the Afghan-Soviet War, the CIA contributed greatly to the outcome of the events in the favor of the United States by taking part in the Iran-Iraq War, the Gulf War, and the invasion of Iraq. Finally, the CIA was on the scene once again as the financier and the father of the Arab Spring that took place in the Arab countries in 2010. While the governments in Libya, Tunisia, Egypt, and Yemen were overthrown in the large-scale uprisings, the governments changed in Morocco, Jordan, Iraq, Kuwait, and Oman. However, Syria suffered the most from the Arab Spring. In the 13 years from 2010, when the riots began, to the present day, close to 1 million people lost their lives. 7 million people were displaced within the country, and 10 million people migrated to various countries, especially Turkey. And for some reason, the regions where the Syrian oil was most concentrated fell into the hands of the PYD, which was established in 2003 through the CIA. According to Peter Bergen, an American journalist and national security analyst, the CIA has provided regime change through coups in 21 countries since its establishment in 1947. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.